Hello, I am Sarah Gary, and I will be following Megan's lead on the FBA components. And I'll start here in the strengths profile. So, thinking about your student and their strengths, don't just think about their preferences and areas of interest. Think about other strengths, such as social, communication, problem solving, and learning. You really want to beef up and build your student and share a lot of strengths that they have. When we go to create the behavior plan, we can refer back to this section when we are creating and developing a reinforcement system for your student that is individualized and strength based. So, some data tools that you used during the FBA process could also give you some information to put in this area. For example, any interviews you did with the student, teachers, or adults, they hopefully talked about their strengths. So you can review some of those interviews and add in that data here, as well as a reinforcement assessment that you did, again, either with the student or you sent home or teachers did. Um, Pull some strengths, areas of topic preferences, things like that from this reinforcement assessment, and you can add that data here in the strengths box. So take a few seconds or minutes, think about your student and their strengths. Again, not just preferences and topics of interest, but dig a little bit deeper to really build up your student and the strengths that they do have. Moving on to the educational impact for the student. So, when thinking about this area for your student, you want to ask yourself a couple of different questions. So, how does the problem behavior affect their social relationships with both peers and adults alike? How does the problem behavior affect their access to learning and instruction at school? And how does the problem behavior affect the student's overall physical well being? So, thinking about those three areas: relationships, learning, well being. How are problem behaviors currently impacting these three areas for your student? So I'll just share some examples of maybe some statements that you could build paragraphs off of, or some things that you might see in this box. For example, the student is socially impacted by their inability to expressively communicate their needs and wants. This definitely affects their relationships with both adults and peers alike. Relationships can be threatened when the student displays physical aggression, such as the student needs explicit instruction and adult support to help them navigate and problem solve through daily expectations and routines. The student needs additional direct instruction in, it might be things like strategies for compliance, social skills, communication, etc. Again, those were just some examples of statements that you might see and hear in this box. Observations. These two boxes are here for you to fill in your ABC data from your direct observations. You can fill these two boxes however you wish. Don't get hung up on the headings of observation number 1 and observation number 2. In fact, we encourage you to do more than 2 observations. Um, just use this space as you need, but definitely make sure you include all ABC data that you have collected, including the date, the time, the setting, or the activities, and report enough ABCs to describe all the problem behaviors that you defined in the FBA. You might include the count of each problem behavior that was observed during your observation period. You might include, like I said, the setting or activity data. You might also include any visuals or summaries or graphs um, of the ABC data. I know a lot of people like to use Google Forms to submit their ABC data because they give really nice visuals and they summarize the data for you. So you can use these two boxes to cut and paste those graphs, those summaries in here as well. Go ahead on your note catcher and fill in any notes that you may have in this section. Maybe you need more observations. And something to consider too for collecting ABC data is the frequency of the behavior. So if you have a problem behavior, behaviors that are in low frequency, it may take you longer and more observational periods to collect the amount of data you need to analyze. If it's a high frequency behavior, it may only take you a day or two to collect enough ABCs to describe everything and to start seeing a pattern. Okay, so keep that in mind too to gauge how long you might have to collect ABC data. And then finally, the summary statement. So this is probably the most important piece of the FBA process. Before you even start writing your summary statement, you need to take some time to analyze all of the data you've collected. I think this is probably the most difficult step for people to do. It still is for me because you have a lot of information that needs to be summarized and analyzed. But the summary statement is going to put it all together. We're going to make sense of all this data, and from here we're going to move forward, develop a behavior plan, and identify new behavior skills to teach. So, a few things with the summary statement. First thing is you want to summarize and include the functions of the problem behaviors. So that would entail you going through each line of your ABC datas and deciding on what was the possible function of that behavior given the antecedents, the consequences. A couple ways to do that. Again, some people are using Google Forms. So as you fill out each ABC in one form, it will summarize the functions if you have those identified in your form. And I believe it's a bar graph um, that it provides, that it summarizes them in. Or you go through your hard copy ABCs and you tally. So you write out the functions of the behavior, gaining or avoiding, and what is it? Attention, a task, a tangible, is it automatic? And you have your function headings, go through each ABC and tally where you think that that function falls. You may have multiple functions, therefore you're going to have multiple FBA summary statements. And a summary statement should be written in the format of setting, antecedent, problem behavior, and maintaining consequence, just like the ABC data collection form. So, for example, during writing tasks, when a teacher gives a directive to Charlie to start writing, Charlie will throw and or kick items and sometimes elope in the classroom. The perceived function of the problem behavior occurs to be avoidance of initiating writing tasks. So as you can see, the ABC data was detailed enough that the first section of the summary statement included the setting during writing tasks. So again, ABC data was detailed enough that I was able to analyze and summarize that the majority of the settings were during writing tasks. And then the antecedent, well, again, looking at the ABCs, wow, it was when the teacher gave a directive. Whether it was verbal or gesture pointing, maybe we could get a little bit more detailed there. But either way, this is a lot of great detail. So during writing tasks, when a teacher gives him a directive to start writing, so we also honed in on the initiation of writing. He will, and then what the problem behaviors were that were identified, and then that perceived function. So as I'm going through those ABCs, I'm tallying, oh, escape from a teacher directive, escape from a teacher directive. And maybe other information that I gathered through the FBA also showed that, you know what, writing is fine motor skills are maybe a deficit area, and writing is very difficult for Charlie. So that would make sense that during this setting, that we would maybe see problem behaviors. Okay, so again, the summary statement, this is where you want to stop and take time to analyze and summarize your ABC data. That will entail you reading each line of an ABC and determining what that function was in that moment based on what the antecedent or the trigger was and what the response was or the consequence. Okay, here's just a breakdown of creating the summary statement. Again, you can see the parts broken down. So the antecedent or the trigger, the when. So this example is when during less structured class time. Okay, in that box, you might include setting, activity, subject, the time of day. If, again, you analyze your data and there is a pattern with the time of day or a pattern with the subject, like writing. Okay, and then the behavior. The student does what? Again, those are your operational behavior definitions. And you pulled that exactly out of your ABC data as well. And then the consequence or the outcome. So what happened in response to tearing up paper and stomping feet? Oh, the peers laugh at him. So again, you have to analyze, okay, so it's a less structured time, the student is tearing up paper, and the peers are laughing at him. Why would he continue to do that behavior? What is continuing to happen after that behavior? Again, analyzing all those ABCs, a pattern will arise, and you'll see that, oh, he's trying to get attention from his peers. Before moving forward, I just want to encourage you to reach out to your BA who's supporting you through this process because, again, um, the summary statement is the most important piece of the FBA and helping us move forward with creating a behavior plan that is aligned to function of behaviors. And the analyzing of the ABCs can be tricky, and sometimes we need another head in there with us to problem solve and kind of just check in with ourselves to make sure that we're analyzing the data as it's presenting itself. So again, if this is an area you're struggling in or want more practice, take advantage of using our support for analyzing your data. Okay, so moving forward, we're going to continue to wrap up the FBA training. As Katie Cooper talked about before, the science of our FBA and BIP work, we recognize that while this process is laid out sequentially in the checklist or in Enrich, just recognize and know that we will often actually be moving back and forth between assessing and implementing. But indeed, the lowest common denominator to this work is based on employing objective assessment that is individualized to the student. Reviewing our learning target. So when conducting an FBA, you will collect both indirect and direct data that includes ABCs until there is a clear pattern that emerges. Now, not always is it clear. So again, take advantage of the BA support that you have through this training. And like I said, analyzing ABCs takes practice. Learning objectives, so I can operationally define problem behaviors that are objective, clear, and complete. Again, you had some opportunity to do some of that practice in your note catcher and had some discussion around operationally defining problem behaviors. I can understand the relationship of the phases within the FBA checklist. to investigate my questions about the problem behavior and why it continues to occur. Again, we are detectives in this work, and understanding that you will be moving back and forth throughout that FBA checklist to do the detective work that needs to be done. I can be an active observer by using the helpful resources to investigate a student's problematic behavior. Again, um, how do I become an active observer? By using those resources within the FBA checklist. Why are they there and how do I use them? And we also learned about, again, analyzing the collected data in order to develop a hypothesis statement or to determine the function of the problem behavior. Again, this is kind of the beef of an FBA. Um, so moving forward, again, I'm going to encourage you one more time to use the support given through this training. Next steps. So you will have from October 28th through November 10th to finish listening to the videos and watching the slides, to fill out your note catcher, to look at your student's FBA that you're working on, or if you use the sample FBA. And then we will come together November 11th from 8:30 to 9:30 over Zoom to have a targeted discussion of the FBA concepts that were discussed in this training and have time for any questions and answers. And then from November 11th through November 20th, we'll provide, the BAs will provide consultation through remote problem solving on any, whether or not you are currently working on an FBA or not. We are here to provide any kind of support around FBAs. On behalf of your BA team, we thank you for your thoughtful and hard work in studying why a student is engaging in problem behavior. Again, thank you so much for your time, your commitment to digging deeper and getting to know your student and learning to use that objective lens um, to become investigators in trying to help move your student forward in being successful with learning, relationships, and their own well-being. These were the resources used throughout this training as well. I would encourage you to dig a little deeper if you want and check these resources out. Thank you again so much, and we look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.